a notable development is occurring within the core of America's automotive industry. On December 19, 2025, Stellantis, one of Detroit's big three automakers, announced a temporary halt to its U.S. production lines. This announcement has drawn significant attention in Michigan and across the North American manufacturing sector. The decision, which affects thousands of workers in several assembly plants, follows a period of increasing economic pressures and changes in the global market. Stellantis attributes the pause to ongoing supply chain disruptions and rising operational costs. The situation is also linked to trade policies from the Trump administration, particularly tariffs on steel and aluminum. These policies, intended to support American industry, have introduced new complexities for automakers that depend on international supply networks. The inactivity on Jeep and Ram factory floors highlights broader challenges currently facing American manufacturing. This production pause represents an important moment for Detroit and the future direction of U.S. manufacturing. As workers and executives respond to these changes, the decisions made during this period will influence the auto sector in the years ahead. The Stellantis production pause illustrates how global economics, policy decisions, and supply chain dynamics intersect, requiring the industry to adjust to evolving conditions. To understand Stellantis' situation, we look back to 2018, when the Trump administration implemented tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. The intention was to support U.S. metal producers. However, this led to increased costs for automakers who rely heavily on these materials. Automakers had established global supply chains to obtain specific grades of steel and aluminum, which are not always available domestically. The tariffs altered these supply networks, requiring companies to manage higher costs or adjust pricing for consumers. Many automakers initially anticipated the tariffs would be short-term, but as they continued, financial pressures increased. The Center for Automotive Research estimated that the tariffs added several $100s to the cost of each U.S.-built vehicle. Domestic producers, with reduced competition, also raised prices, further increasing industry costs. Stellantis' financial reports indicate a gradual reduction in profit margins, particularly for high-volume models. The production pause is an effort to address these challenges, illustrating how policies designed to benefit one sector can impact others. The effects of these tariffs are now a significant consideration for automakers. The effects of tariffs can be observed in the financial data. Stellantis has reported over $1.5 billion in additional costs since the tariffs were implemented, resulting in layoffs and idled plants. Ford and GM have experienced similar challenges. Ford reported a $1 billion reduction in profits in a single year, and GM closed plants such as Lordstown, reflecting changes in manufacturing operations. The recent Stellantis announcement places 18,000 U.S. workers on temporary layoff, with additional effects across the Big Three. These figures represent families and communities adjusting to new circumstances. Layoffs extend to suppliers, logistics, and local businesses. The tariffs, which were designed to support American industry, have contributed to increased costs, plant closures, and job reductions. For Stellantis, the accumulation of these costs has resulted in a production halt. North America's auto supply chain is an example of cross-border efficiency, developed over decades of free trade. Parts and components routinely cross the US, Canada, and Mexico several times before a car is completed. Tariffs on steel and aluminum have introduced additional costs at each border crossing. US suppliers using imported steel have experienced higher costs, which are then reflected in prices to automakers. Canadian and Mexican suppliers, purchasing US metals, have also seen price increases. This has resulted in a series of price increases and additional administrative requirements, reducing North American production's global competitiveness. For instance, a Michigan-assembled vehicle may use Canadian parts made with U.S. steel, with each stage now incurring higher costs. The previously smooth movement of goods has been replaced by delays and increased uncertainty. Stellantis' production pause is a direct outcome of these supply chain adjustments. The company is indicating that, under current trade conditions, the system is not functioning as intended. This situation highlights the vulnerabilities of an integrated manufacturing system affected by tariffs. The U.S. tariffs led to prompt responses from several major trading partners. Canada, the EU, Japan, South Korea, and China implemented counter-tariffs, many of which were directed at the American auto sector. The EU introduced a 25% tariff on U.S. vehicles, which affected exports, such as the Ford Mustang. China increased tariffs on American-made vehicles to 40%, impacting exports of higher-end SUVs and luxury cars. As a result, U.S. automakers experience greater difficulty and higher costs when selling abroad, leading to reduced access to important markets. The prospect of transforming American factories into export hubs diminished as international markets became less accessible. With domestic production costs increasing and export opportunities declining, the financial structure for U.S. manufacturing became less viable. Stellantis and other manufacturers face challenges from both domestic and international pressures, making continued operations more difficult without significant changes. The international responses added to the complexities introduced by the initial tariffs. Stellantis is taking steps to address the current situation. The production halt is a planned pause intended to support recovery efforts. The company is focusing on new, higher-margin electric vehicles such as the Ram 1500 REV and Jeep Recon EV. By prioritizing EVs, Stellantis aims to achieve higher pricing and balanced material costs. Stellantis is also restructuring its North American operations and renegotiating supplier contracts. The company is seeking to source more materials from within the USMCA bloc. Investments in automation and data analytics as well as smart factories are intended to improve efficiency and reduce costs. Stellantis is communicating with policymakers in Washington, explaining that Section 232 tariffs have an impact on jobs and competitiveness. The production pause serves as a reset and as a communication to policymakers. The approach includes internal innovation, supply chain restructuring, and advocacy for policy adjustments. The situation is significant, and Stellantis is working to adapt. The results will influence the direction of American auto manufacturing. Detroit's auto manufacturers are currently facing significant challenges. Historically, these companies have demonstrated an ability to adapt to changing conditions. The Big Three have managed through oil crises, increased foreign competition, and the 2008 financial downturn, each time adjusting their operations. Their current business model relies on the profitability of trucks and SUVs, which generates cash flow for investments in electric vehicles and restructuring efforts. The shift to electric vehicles presents new challenges, including increased competition from Tesla and other international manufacturers. Tariffs have contributed to higher costs for batteries and components, complicating this transition. If the transition to electric vehicles is not managed profitably, the long-term sustainability of these companies could be affected. Their future will depend on both internal strategies and external policy developments, and automakers are currently focused on cost reduction and new product launches, but the broader trade environment remains outside their control. The outcome of Section 232 and Section 232 tariffs will play a significant role. At present, Detroit's automakers are maintaining operations, but long-term success will require a stable and predictable global trade environment. This period serves as an opportunity to evaluate both resilience and adaptability. Detroit's history is rooted in steel production, technological development, and adaptability. The city's auto industry introduced the moving assembly line and contributed significantly during World War II, shaping American manufacturing. The current situation with Stellantis represents another phase in Detroit's ongoing industrial evolution. Detroit's workforce is preparing for changes in the industry, including the shift to electric vehicles and new supplier strategies. Automakers and their teams are continuing to develop new products and processes in response to current challenges. The region has experience managing industrial disruptions and adapting to new circumstances. Future progress will depend on advancements in technology, supply chain management, and effective policy decisions. The current situation highlights the significance of international relations and industry advocacy. Detroit's history provides a framework for ongoing adaptation within the auto industry. The pause in production at Stellantis is expected to be temporary, and the industry's next steps will determine its direction moving forward. The Stellantis situation provides insights that extend beyond the automotive sector. It serves as an example of the complexities involved in industrial policy within a globalized economy. Protectionist policies, even when designed to help, can produce results that benefit some industries while creating challenges for others. This experience demonstrates the importance of building supply chains that are resilient and diversified, rather than focused solely on efficiency. Companies are now considering a mix of onshoring, nearshoring, and global sourcing to reduce dependency on any single approach. The distinction between business operations and public policy is less clear, making it important for organizations to anticipate changes in policy. Detroit's experience reflects the broader challenge for the United States, balancing domestic employment, international competitiveness, and strong partnerships. The unused factories illustrate the significant considerations involved in shaping modern industrial strategies.